Good morning, family. I'm Dr. Chris, and I'm here in Hollywood, California to talk with you about a really important topic, and that topic is forgiveness. So before we learn about how to forgive, it's really important that we get a clear understanding about what forgiveness is and what it isn't. And the reason for this is because the way we make sense of what forgiveness is will either impede or facilitate that process for us. So to me, forgiveness means an intentional and voluntary process by which a victim to an offense learns to change his or her attitudes about that offense and also learns to let go of negative feelings that are associated with that negative life experience. And those negative emotions are either hurt, vengefulness, betrayal. And there's this really interesting quote, and I don't know who said it, but it goes like this. When a person doesn't learn how to forgive, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And well, this very strong image, it has to do with about holding on to grudges, which people who find it difficult to forgive typically do. They hold on to grudges that are so strong, and it causes a lot of unnecessary pain in their lives, both psychologically and physically. Okay, hi everyone. I'm now in Walnut Creek, California. As you can see, that's Mount Diablo right behind me. I'm just hiking through the trails here. I had to leave Hollywood, come back to the San Francisco Bay Area. And so let's continue our discussion on forgiveness and going back to clarifying what forgiveness isn't and what it is. So first of all, forgiveness isn't about condoning cruel or unkind behavior in the other person. It's not about forgetting what had happened to us, because we still may have the memory, but when we go through the forgiveness process, we aren't triggered by the emotions that are associated with the memory. Also, I think a lot of people think that forgiveness is like a religious experience or a religious practice in some way. Actually, anyone can go throughout a forgiveness process, no matter what culture you come from, whether you're agnostic, atheist, doesn't matter. Anyone can go through a forgiveness process. Also, it's important to understand that forgiveness is not about minimizing our pain or denying our feelings, okay? Because they exist, we're going to acknowledge them, that they exist, and they play an important role in terms of telling us information about ourselves and what's going on in our environment. And also, forgiveness is not about becoming a doormat, and it's not about a sign of weakness. Now, some people think, well, they can't forgive because they think to themselves, well, it may be a sign of weakness, that I'm just letting the other person have their way with me. No, definitely not. It's about empowering you, and it's about you first. It's not about having the other person be relieved of any guilty feelings or anything like that. So those are some things that you should consider in terms of what forgiveness isn't. So what forgiveness is about, it's for you to take power back in your life over the anger and the repetitive thoughts of hurt that are consuming your mind and your life. I also see forgiveness as for you and you only. And now what I mean by that is for your health and healing, your own psychological and physical well-being. Forgiveness is also a choice to acknowledge that we can't change the past, but that we're also not going to be stuck in the past. And lastly, I would say that forgiveness is about becoming the hero in life and not the victim anymore. And what I mean by this is a concept in literature, theater, movies, this concept known as the hero's journey, and you can see it anywhere from like the Odyssey, Star Wars, and Harry Potter, where the main character, the protagonist, is slighted, betrayed, hurt in some way, and they kind of go through life confused at first, not sure what to do, hurt, And they got to overcome this hurt by going through a journey, whatever that may be, and becoming the hero by overcoming their inner demons. So that's kind of what forgiveness is a little bit about, and it's one more tool for you in life to overcome whatever inner demons that are going on for you. So right now I'm at the UC Berkeley campus in Berkeley, California, and I want us to turn our attention as to why even forgive in the first place. Now, since the beginning of our existence as humans, forgiveness has been a long-standing concern for us because we need to learn how to live together. Our brains are interpersonal organs, and we are primarily social and emotional beings. Now, if we're going to have long-standing relationships with our family, friends, co-workers, husband, wife, well, forgiveness just may be the tool that we need to learn to live in harmony with each other. Now, it's up to you to decide what kind of relationship you want to have with that person. It may even be cutting off all ties with them, or it may be setting up appropriate boundaries so that you two can live in harmony with each other again. According to Dr. Fred Luskin, and in his book, Forgive for Good, he has found through his research that forgiving leads to many health benefits. Some of these health benefits include decreased stress response, a decrease and reduction in blood pressure and muscle tension. He's also found that it leads to a healthier immune response, and that people who report forgiving also have healthier cardiovascular health and also better sleep cycles. Now, when we dwell on hurt, our past wounds, our bodies respond as if it's in danger, as if there's an immediate threat to our emotional and physical well-being, which activates our fight, flight, freeze, or surrender response in our body. Now, when we're constantly ruminating and thinking about the past, repeating those events in our mind, our body and brain doesn't recognize what we're imagining as if it's happening now or 10 years ago, because it's as if we're bringing the past into the present. So when we're constantly activating the fight, flight, freeze, or surrender survival mechanisms, our bodies become flooded with stress chemicals, stress hormones that impair our ability to think rationally, clearly, and there's also greater activation of primitive brain regions. Now, when our body is under the influence of these stress chemicals, we blame other people for how we feel, which gives greater power to the other person to regulate our emotions. And consequently, this leads to greater impairments in the immune system and our physical health and well-being. So right now I'm in San Francisco, California, and as you can see, I got the beautiful painted ladies right behind me here in Alamo Square Park, and I want to ask you a question. Are you ready to forgive? Now, it's perfectly natural and normal in human nature to be angry at the people that have hurt us in the past. And we may not even be ready to forgive because it may not even be an appropriate process for us to go about that. Now, it's important that you ask yourself a couple of questions to determine if you are ready to go throughout a forgiveness process. Number one, where is this coming from? Who is telling you or that you should forgive? Is it coming from yourself or from others? Now, if it's coming from others, then perhaps it's not a good idea to go throughout the forgiveness process yet, because it's never good to push yourself to do something that you're not ready to begin yet. And also, number two, ask yourself, am I in a situation where I'm still being taken advantage of, where I'm still being victimized? Now, the reason for this is because if you are in that kind of situation, definitely you should not be going through a forgiveness process, because sometimes we need to step into our anger to empower ourselves to get out of a bad situation for our own survival. Now, I'll admit, to genuinely and authentically forgive someone is not an easy thing to do. And the reason for that is because we may be preventing ourselves to do that because of our feelings of pride, shame, and humiliation. Also, it involves changing the stories that we tell ourselves and that we tell others about what had happened to us. Now, those stories may sound like they have hurt me more than I have hurt them, and also my hurt and pain is too much, too big to forgive. Now, in the next section, we're going to talk about how to process those emotions, how to release and let go of those emotions, and how to change the stories that are keeping us stuck in the past that we continue to tell ourselves. So right now I'm going to walk you through the steps of how to go about a forgiveness process. And before you go through a forgiveness process, it's really important to go through it with someone where you can feel safe and that you can also say whatever you want, have whatever thoughts you have, and go through all the feelings that are coming up for you in a non-judgmental way. So this model that I'm going to be presenting to you, it's very integrative because I borrow from people like Parachin, Robinson, and Luskin, and also a lot of my own clinical experience that I have found that has been helpful for other people and also myself. So let's go through this. Step number 1, educate yourself about forgiveness. And you've been doing that throughout this entire video. I would also recommend that you read stories, watch movies, read newspaper articles about people who have gone through their own forgiveness processes as well. So for example, there's a man named Azim Khamisa, and he's written several books and contributed to other books about his own forgiveness process, because what had happened to him is that his son was murdered by a gang member in Los Angeles. Now this was devastating for his entire family, and remarkably enough, he was able to go throughout a forgiveness process. So read anything by Azim Khamisa. It's a very inspiring story, and hopefully what he says can be helpful to you as well. Okay, step number 2. This would be understand that holding grudges and resentments has a high price tag. Now we've talked about this in terms of the psychological and physiological price tag that holding resentment and grudges can do on us. Step number 3, remembering that when we don't forgive, we are giving power to the other person over our thoughts and feelings. Step number 4, knowing what it is that you feel and experiencing those feelings to their complete cycle. Now, without numbing or trying to push away those feelings, but really feeling them, experiencing them, going through the entire cycle. And this is done by talking about them with a trusted individual, whether it's a therapist, a person in your religious community, a really close friend or family member. And like I said earlier, in a safe relationship where you feel non-judged. Step number 5, write out in great detail what had happened to you that caused you pain. Step number 6, now this is a difficult step for a lot of people to go through, but it's a really important step as well, and understandably so why it's difficult, and that is having compassion towards the person that had wronged you in some way. Now, to understand this concept of compassion better, there's this quote by a first century Jewish philosopher, and it goes like this: be kind to everyone you meet because either he or she is also enduring a great struggle in life. Now, what this requires us to do is to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person to understand, hey, you know, they're also struggling in life, or else perhaps they wouldn't have done whatever it is they did. Now, like we said earlier, it's not about condoning or saying it's okay what had happened, but when we're engaging in compassion, is to gain an emotional understanding of perhaps what the other person is going through. And this will help with our own forgiveness process as well. Step number 7, writing what you've gained from that experience and what makes you now a wiser person that empowers you. Step number 8, writing a letter to the person that caused you pain, but not mailing it to them. And in the letter, it will acknowledge your feelings, your thoughts, also what you've learned from the experience, like in number 7, now what you're going to do to empower yourself, and Also, that statement of compassion that we talked about earlier, that also includes a statement of forgiveness. Step number 9, getting rid of those letters that you just wrote and doing it in a way where you feel like that there's a separation between you and that other person, where you feel like you're releasing and letting go of those emotions. You're breaking those ties. Now, you can do this in a ceremonial way, such as burning those letters and scattering the ashes. Do what feels appropriate to you and that you feel is congruent with your personality. Now, finally, step number 10, being focused on the present, being focused on your present life. Now, you can do this with activities such as Tai Chi, martial arts, meditation, art, playing instruments. It's really important that you become focused on the present and your present life so that you can continue to move forward into the future. So there you have it, a 10-step process on how to forgive. Now, this is not intended to be a one-size-fits-all approach. Take a look at the full 10 steps and see what applies to your needs and in your life. Perhaps only 2 out of the 10 steps apply to what you need in life right now. And I would also recommend working on the small forgivenesses that life presents you, such as a person cutting you off in traffic or another person being rude to you. Just the small stuff in life before you move on to the more serious and difficult things. And so, like always, thank you, family. Please leave a comment below and tell me a little bit about what has been helpful for you in this video and perhaps your own forgiveness process and what you plan on doing with this information, perhaps a little bit about a person you plan on forgiving as well. So like always, like, share this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right, thank you, family.